He asked me to preventively suspend Undersecretary Director General Bantag of BuCor so that there may be a fair, impartial investigation on the matter, so that all doubts will be put to rest that there are no sacred cows in this administration. The basis is for an impartial investigation. I don't think that we can attribute anything at once. We cannot conclude anything at once. I believe that the President, in his best judgment, as in his experience as a governor and as a president, actually gave me a good thing to do, to issue a preventive suspension and to get an OIC inside to make sure that everything is investigated properly.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Jess De Los Santos. The big story tonight. President Marcos ordered the suspension of Bureau of Corrections Director General Gerald Bantag over the death of the alleged middleman in the Percy Lapid slay case. Authorities also revealed that there were actually 2 middlemen involved in Lapid's killing. Brian Castillo with the big story.
The Philippine National Police revealed that there were actually 2 people who allegedly served as middlemen in the killing of broadcaster Percy Lapid. One of them was the prisoner inside the new Bilibid prison, who died on October 18, just hours after the supposed gunman Joel Escorial was presented to the media. Confusion arose after authorities claimed earlier that the middleman in Bilibid has already been secured.
Sinecure po natin yan at kaya nga po nagkakaroon po ng autopsy para malaman po kung anong tunay na nangyari dito sa isa.
In a press conference on Friday, Justice Secretary Boy Remulla admitted that a lack of coordination between the DOJ and the PNP might have caused this unfortunate turn of events.
Ang sa akin lang, sayang, if I was informed that we had to secure somebody inside Bilibid, that could have been done very early. Coordination is very important, and there was probably a shortcoming there.
Remulla is also blaming discrepancies with the name of the suspected middleman. Crisanto Villamor was the name the authorities got first based on the statement of Escorial. This name was used by the PNP to search for the middleman's whereabouts. But when this information was cross-checked with the carpeta or the list of persons deprived of liberty from the Bilibid, the name Crisanto Villamor was nowhere to be found. But there is one June Garcia Villamor who was imprisoned in the said facility. While based on a court ruling, a certain June Globa Villamor was also incarcerated in Bilibid after being convicted of murder, attempted murder, and violation of the Comelec gun ban. Per verification done by the Bureau of Correction, Remulla says the names Crisanto Villamor, June Garcia Villamor, and June Globa Villamor all refer to one person.
No, we just have to reconcile yung age niya, yung cases niya, sa record niya sa PNP, tsaka sa record niya sa BJMP, record niya sa BuCor.
But for the PNP, the name provided by the gunman holds a heavier weight.
Pangalan na sinabi ng gunman ay yun po yung hinahanap pa. So that's still part of the investigation to establish the real identity.
As for the second middleman, the PNP has confirmed that the suspect has been transferred from the BJMP's facility in Taguig to the PNP Custodial Center in Camp Crame. Meanwhile, Bureau of Corrections Director General Gerald Bantag is currently under preventive suspension following the death of one of the middlemen in Bilibid. According to Remulla, this is under President Marcos's order. Former AFP Chief of Staff Gregorio Catapang Jr. will temporarily take Bantag's place.
He asked me to preventively suspend Undersecretary Director General Gerald Bantag of BuCor so that there may be a fair, impartial investigation on the matter, so that all doubts will be put to rest that there are no sacred cows in this administration.
For News 5, Brian Castillo, we are One News.
Now, to talk to us more about these developments, we have with us on the line Bureau of Corrections spokesperson Gabriel Chaclag. Spokes, welcome to the big story. First and foremost, na-establish na ba natin talaga ano yung tamang identity, the name of the first middleman here, and anything here that we have established so far?
Hi, Jester. Good evening, and good evening to all your viewers and listeners. Firstly, Dito lang po natin nalaman lately na reconcile nga yung records because what we have initially was June Villamor E. Globa. But hindi po natin alam kung yung Crisanto na sinasabi nila ay yun din po yung tao na yun. So, but right now we have already reconciled. Now we understand that they are referring to the one and the same person that died on the 18th of October.
Now, how long did it take bago nyo ma-reconcile yung tamang identity nitong first middleman? Because I mean, the timing is very curious. This Escorial was presented to the media October 18. As it turns out, the first middleman also died on the same day. So, I mean, that begs the question, why was the first middleman not secured immediately once Escorial actually made his statements?
Because we didn't know at first. We in BuCor, hindi naman natin alam na pala na June Villamor ang nila, pinutukoy nila. In fact, we don't have the name during that time. And we only came to know, I think it was only yesterday that we came to know that they are referring to that person.
Okay, so it was only yesterday that you were informed of the identity of the first middleman. And then we do know as well that you're supposed to at least conduct further autopsy on the body. Do we have updates on that as well?
Well, the autopsy was done yesterday, and it was done by the NBI medical legal team, and they will be the one to release the results and the official results of the autopsy that has been conducted. And kami naman po dito sa BuCor, we will coordinate and cooperate sa mga investigators ng PNP and DOJ. And in fact, they were here yesterday and also today, so we are reconciling our notes, and whatever requirements that will be required of the BuCor, we will be providing to the investigators.
Then also, can you tell us more about the second middleman involved in the killing? Has he been cooperating with authorities, and do we know how he's connected with the middleman from Bilibid?
We have no information regarding that, Sir Jester, and but we are only aware the PDLs that are under our penitentiary at our agency.
Okay, but so far, at least based din sa identity ng first middleman, have we established any more connections or possible leads as to the identity of the actual mastermind?
Well, that is part of the investigation, siguro, Jester, and as I have said, we will be providing and we will be cooperating with the investigators. At ready naman po kami dito. We have compiled all the records, and kasama po natin ang buong bayan na naghihintay din ng kasagutan sa mga tanong na lumalabas.
Okay. And then, of course, will there be any changes here within the BuCor while the investigation is ongoing after, of course, this series of incidents na nangyari after nga nitong pag-surrender ni Escorial?
Well, aside from the changes, from the change of leadership, ay tuloy-tuloy po yung ating mga plans and programs. In fact, the next week, starting Monday, will be the National Corrections Consciousness Week. We are very busy preparing for that. But then this thing happens, so we'll have to prepare also for the incoming policy of the BuCor. So those are the things that we are considering right now.
All right. Again, thank you very much for entertaining our interview this evening. We, of course, are going to wait for further updates on the investigation. Again, Gabriel Chaclag, spokesperson of the Bureau of Corrections. Now, let's pause for a quick break. Right after that, the DOH has recently announced the local transmission of the Omicron XBB subvariant and XBC variant. We'll look into that and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Residents of Irpin and Bucha in Ukraine. They returned home after fleeing the war. The two towns just outside of Kiev became synonymous with mass graves and human rights violations by Russian troops who retreated from the area in April. The dancers are mostly women who are coming back to reunite with their husbands, send kids to school, or find jobs. They say that the dance classes help them feel a little bit more normal. According to the UN, 7.5 million Ukrainians are registered refugees in Europe. But 1.3 million Ukrainians have returned home, joining millions more who are displaced within the country. Many of those returned to Kiev and its surroundings, where they said it felt relatively safe until the start of this month, when Russia struck civilian targets in the largest missile attacks since the start of the war. But the UN says that the biggest reason people are returning is not because of Ukraine's perceived safety, but simply because people are running out of savings and means to stay abroad. Jobs are scarce and salaries are low. Half of Bucha's businesses remain closed or are readjusting. Families are broken, and the town's bullet holes and destroyed buildings are serving as constant reminders of the war. However, for 2 hours twice a week, these dancers find therapy in tango.
The Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, or BJMP, conducted Oplan Greyhound, wherein they inspect the rooms of inmates at the Manila City Jail to check for any contraband. This is the second consecutive month that they've conducted the operation. But authorities clarified that this has nothing to do with the allegations that the supposed masterminds in Lapid's killing are staying in one of the jails in Metro Manila. Jail officials also said there's no information regarding this specific matter.
Kung sakasakali man po may mailing po sa amin dito, sisikapin po nating malaman at maimbestigahan kung sino po ang involved dito.
Oplan Greyhound is a marching order of Interior Secretary Ben-Hur Abalos from the moment he assumed office.
Bago pa po ang mga issue po regarding sa mga pagpatay po sa ating mga kaibigan sa media, meron na po tayong order from the DILG po and sa Chief BJMP natin, nalinisin po natin ang ating mga piitan.
In their inspection, several sharp objects, metal and wooden sticks, and makeshift water heaters were seized from inmates. For News 5, Justine Punsalang. We are One News.
President Bongbong Marcos has appointed former PNP Special Action Force Commander Moro Virgilio Lazo as the new Director General of the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency. Here's what we know about the new PDEA chief. Military Academy Mahardika class of 1984. Now, under the PNP, Lazo served as chief of the PNP's Firearms and Explosives Office. He was also the Provincial Police Director of Benguet and Cagayan and Regional Director for Central Luzon. Lazo, meanwhile, also served as a member of the late former President Fidel V. Ramos's Presidential Security Group, where he later entered the Special Forces. In 1989, he left the PNP staff but returned in 2010 as Chief Directorial Staff of the Police Unit. 5 years later, Lazo was appointed by late former President Noynoy Aquino as the commander of PNP staff. Lazo is now set to succeed former PDEA Director General Wilkins Villanueva. Meanwhile, the Health Department has confirmed the local transmission of the highly contagious Omicron XBB subvariant and XBC variant. In an online town hall meeting, DOH Epidemiology Bureau Director Dr. Alethea de Guzman said the country's XBB and XBC cases are not linked to travel. De Guzman also noted that the transmission is still localized because the variants were detected in select regions. To date, the Philippines has recorded 81 XBB Omicron subvariant cases, while 193 cases of the XBC variant have been reported. Now, here to discuss the possible impact of the XBB subvariant and XBC variant, we have on the line Dr. Jose Rene De Grano, President of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines. Good evening, Doc De Grano. Welcome to The Big Story. I guess first things first, have we been seeing a rise in COVID-19 hospitalizations after, of course, we have, at least the DOH has reported the local transmission of the new subvariant and variant?
Yes, yes, sir. Good evening. There's only we're observing a very slight increase only in our private hospitals as of our last report, and then probably we should be observing more in a week or two if there is really going to be an increase in the admission.
Okay, Dr. Grano, your line is a bit choppy at the moment, but from what I understand, you're saying there's been a slight increase. Is that correct, Dr. Grano?
Okay.
Okay, we seem to be having a bit of a technical issue here trying to connect to Doc De Grano. We'll try our best to get back to him later on in the program. But for now, let's move on to other stories still to come. We'll get the latest on tropical depression Obet straight from Panahon TV. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching the big story here on One News. Now, circling back to one of our top stories, the health department has confirmed the local transmission of the highly contagious Omicron XBB subvariant and the XBC variant. Now, to talk to us more about this, let's welcome back on the line Dr. Jose Rene De Grano, President of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines. Doc De Grano, good evening and welcome again to the big story. Now, earlier, I was asking you about if you had at least recorded a rise in hospitalizations for COVID-19 wards, especially for regions wherein there's been a reported local transmission of the XBB and XBC. Of course, we're referring to Region 6, 11, and 12. So were there any increases?
Right now, yes, we are. There is an increase in regions you mentioned, 6, 11, and 12. But here in the region, in the NCR, in Region 4, there is only a very slight increase in the private hospitals. Yes.
Okay, so there's been a slight increase, but is that level of increase, at least in the regions that you mentioned earlier, are they alarming?
They have surpassed usually we have around 30% occupancy in the COVID wards, but right now I think they are reaching around 40 or more % of their COVID beds.
So around 40% still tolerable pa pag ganung level,
Yes,
Dr.
yes.
Negrano?
It's still tolerable and it's still low risk as of the moment. But we're trying to observe the next 1 or 2 weeks if there's going to be an increase in other areas also.
Okay, so at least the next 2 weeks will be very crucial for us to determine whether there's going to be an alarming increase in terms of hospitalization. Now, following the DOH's announcement, is PHAPI looking at implementing any new protocols to ensure that these cases could easily be addressed?
Well, actually, we have the same protocol, no? Probably we'll just have to be more strict, especially in those areas where we have, or in the COVID wards of the hospitals. We should be more strict in the implementation of their minimum health protocols. Yes.
All right. Again, thank you very much for those updates. PHAPI President Jose Rene De Grano. Thank you, Doc. Meanwhile, Tropical Depression Obet maintains its strength as it threatens Batanes. To give us more details on this, we have with us Panahon TV's Francis Oreo. Good evening, Francis. Now, tropical cyclone wind signal raised so far due to Typhoon Obet. Can you give us more updates on that one?
So good evening, Jester. So based on the latest forecast of Pagasa, tropical cyclone wind signal number 1 has been raised already in the areas of Batanes, Babuyan Islands, and the northeastern portion of Cagayan, mainly in the towns of Santa Ana and Gonzaga, due to the effects of this tropical depression Obet. So in this wind signal category, Jester, we are expecting the effects of tropical depression Obet's winds within the 36-hour lead time and the intermittent rains.
So far, what's the update on the location of Obet? What movement are we expecting so far?
So the center of tropical depression Obet was located over the coastal waters of Basco, Batanes, and it has a maximum sustained winds of 55 kilometers per hour and gustiness of up to 70 kilometers per hour. It is now moving over the vicinity of Batanes at the speed of 25 kilometers per hour, and its track is generally westward until tomorrow. And its center is likely to pass over or very close to Batanes tonight.
And when do we expect it to exit the Philippine area of responsibility?
So we're expecting this tropical depression to exit the Philippine area of responsibility, most likely by tomorrow morning or afternoon.
Now, also, any gale warnings in effect, and can you at least explain to us further what it means?
Jesters, since we are now experiencing again the effects of northeast monsoon or amihan, especially in the up north, and the tropical depression Obet, gale warning has also raised as strong to gale force winds will be expected associated with amihan and the tropical cyclone. This is particularly in the northern and eastern seaboards of northern Luzon, where the sea condition in Batanes, Cagayan, including Babuyan Islands, and the northern coast of Ilocos Norte is expected to be rough, and the waves height might go up to 5.5 meters. So we are also advising our kapatid whose fishing boats are small to not venture out into the sea while gale warning is active.
Okay, konting pag-iingat. And then lastly, before we let you go, Francis, can you give us the weather forecast for the rest of the country over this weekend?
So for the weekend, Jester, again, we are expecting that rains over northern Luzon due to the effects of amihan or the northeast monsoon, while our kapatid in Metro Manila and the rest of the country, including Visayas and Mindanao, will most likely have generally fair weather condition apart from the chances of isolated rain showers or thunderstorms.
All right, thank you very much for those updates. Again, Panahon TV reporter Francis Oreo.
The clock struck 12 Eastern Time, multi-awarded pop superstar Taylor Swift has come out of the woods to release her newest 13-track album, Midnights. Swifties waited a lot of midnights for another taste of Taylor's musical genius. In the Philippines, a lot of fans even went to a listening party organized by U Music at the podium, where they poured their heart and soul to every T-Swift song. But Taylor had one more trick up her sleeve. 3 hours after releasing Midnights, the Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter dropped Midnights 3 a.m. edition, which features 7 extra tracks. Both albums are out now in digital streaming platforms. It's official. Jin of BTS and Coldplay are collaborating for a solo single called The Astronaut. And here's more. Jin will be singing it with Coldplay in a live broadcast from Buenos Aires. This is Jin's last project before enlisting in the military. The Astronaut is set to drop on October 28. Coldplay previously did a collaboration with BTS in the song My Universe. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
All right, lots of things happening in the music scene, and that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more in-depth analysis. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We are One News, all sides, all the time.